Watch out. It's Mark and Pete.
Hello and welcome to the show. More colourful conversations with Mark and Pete. Yes, this is the show dedicated to religion, politics and business. And on this week's show, we have great predictions for 2017. Well, folks, yes, here we are coming to the end of 2016 and we head into 2017. Now, many people have skeptical views about what 2017 will hold. Well, do not doubt any longer because, of course, on Mark and Pete, we have some great predictions for you covering religion, politics and business and many other topics. Now, in order to set the scene, I thought that what we would do is just give our view on some of the things that might happen. Well, this is a little poetical view called Fateful Forecast for the Folks. The outlook in life will be foggy, with occasional scattered migrants, eventually flooding across Europe, settling upon cities and towns. The political climate will be stormy, with regular outbreaks of infighting, and the temperature changes see many hotheads reaching boiling point. Lightning strikes twice, as there will be more bizarre conditions to manage, from the thunder of the loony left to those proving to be a right total washout. In the east, humour will be mainly dreary, whilst in the west it will be wet and windy, causing heated discussions across multiple borders. There may be showers of praise for a few business do-gooders, but in entertainment it will be dull and overcast as usual. As the economic temperatures changes, there will be certainly a meltdown, and pockets around the globe will dry up, resulting in a business drought. However, the atmosphere by the year end could be extremely frosty, whereby there might be a freeze on peace negotiations. Finally, when a cold front sweeps through everyone's livelihoods and cloud of uncertainty sets over the entire world's population. Well, that's the forecast for the year. And now it's time for the weather. Sleep tight. So with me today is clergyman
Oh,
Pete.
dear.
And yes, that's my prediction for 2017. I think I've encapsulated the whole of the year there.
Sadly.
Pete, what's your view?
Well, my view is that sadly, your little poem there probably does summarise the entire year that's ahead of us, including plenty of weather. I think that there will be plenty of weather.
I predict there will be weather.
But whether or not we're ready for it, that's another question. I'm interested by this because you saying a poem like that and just airily saying what's going to happen during the year ahead, what guarantee do we have that you are in any way going to be accurate? Look, I happen to have just here now, if I can get the sound technician just to play this for us, I've got the clip of the end of your poem and your prediction for what was going to happen in 2016. So yes, listeners, let's just see how accurate this guy, Mark, the esteemed businessman, let's just see how accurate he really is. Here it is. You're just getting to the end of your poem in Great Predictions for 2016. That's just coming up now. We'll just listen to what you had to say.
While inflated egos are becoming more plump, count your ballots. Whether Republican or Democrat with a civic hump, it will probably be someone we all want to thump. Hold your horses. Our whole world could be for the high jump. The next White House bigwig could be Donald Trump. Yes, it's possible. Yes, folks. It could be that Donald Trump could be the next president of the United States. Now, what do you think about that?
Well, what do you think about that? That was the quote from last year.
I think again, it does show you that, of course, if you do listen to the Mark and Pete show, there's some great advice. And I would say that, for me, it was almost a certainty that he was going to be president of the United States. And many people say, yes, but it's a hindsight. No, as you quite rightly say. If you look back through history, we made these predictions, or I certainly did, because I think one of the things that we can see, and I think this is another great prediction for the future, is that we will see even more political unrest with people who are really battling against the conventions of politics. Donald Trump, in my opinion, was somebody who was, yes, a very well-known character, a brand, as he likes to see himself. But I think the one thing that he did do is he tackled the key and hot topics in a somewhat provocative way.
Yeah.
But I actually think that many of the European nations will see a similar trait. I think Donald Trump has set a precedent now. Yes, a precedent for a president. But I think that what we will see in my predictions for 2017 is that people like Angela Merkel must be shuffling rather uncomfortably, and perhaps some of those people in the far right in France and elsewhere might be thinking, this is our opportunity. So I think that we will see in 2017 more political unrest, and perhaps for some that might not seem very comfortably. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I agree with you, and if listeners want to go back and listen to that episode, it's available on iTunes and on Spreaker. It's also on YouTube if you search for it. The show was about the predictions for 2016, and after that poem, you went on to explain, as you just did, why you thought he would win. Listeners can go and listen to it for themselves. The show was called Great Predictions for 2016, and I agree with you that he was speaking to a huge groundswell of people who felt they weren't being listened to, and he could reach them. Now, I don't think he was the only politician doing that. I think he was quite lucky, but because he was such a big personality, he had 100% name recognition in tests done. That gave him the advantage that he needed to come through and win. Name recognition is one of the big things. Of course, if you've got brand recognition, you'll know from your business experience, that puts you ahead of the game.
Well, so that's why I think that Angela Merkel
Yeah.
will be a brand that perhaps is a little bit tarnished.
That's right.
The poem I mentioned about Europeans suffering from migrants settling all over Europe. Well, of course, that's already happened. But I think that we will see that could be the thing that, particularly in Germany, I think a lot of people will think it hasn't worked.
Yes.
And so my prediction here is that a lot of Germans will say enough is enough.
Well, Merkel's name is, of course, now associated so much with the crime wave, which came about from her insistence, and it's certainly seen as that, her personal decision, to open the doors to migrants without any vetting, which seems to have been her position pushing it. I'm sure there were others involved. And so her name being associated with that means, look, if she doesn't lose, if she does get back in, it will be by a very slim margin. And that's that sentiment that we need to. It's an interesting sentiment, isn't it? It's we need a home. Is the idea. We've got our own country. Why can't we protect ourselves from who's coming in? Why is it that Western countries, as we call, the European and American, Australia, these people with the common ancestry, why are they not allowed to have a home? No one questions that the Jews, well, people do question the Jews should have a home. That was a bad choice. But no one questions, for example, that in Arab countries they should be allowed to have a home. And yet their countries, as nation states, are a lot younger than ours. And so why is it that that's not questioned? Whereas for British, American, German, French people, it's, you're not allowed to have your own home. You've got to let in everyone else. Otherwise, you're being racist. And so I do think, let's get to a prediction. I do think that Marine Le Pen will win the presidential election in 2017. Wow. People saying she's got a chance. I think that this is where Donald Trump's win has an effect. I think his win will ripple out. People will think, change is possible. Whether or not you think that Donald Trump will actually be a good president, we voiced our doubts in other podcast episodes, but whether or not he is, the fact of his win, the change, the breaking of the sort of, how would you describe the sort of corporate left-wing cartel that have been controlling American, European, British politics for so many years, it's been broken by Trump. So I think that opens the door.
I think that Donald Trump will be controversial. I think he will continue to go on this.
Oh, this is your prediction for Trump.
Well,
okay, let's quiet. Listen, everyone.
He will upset people.
Yeah, this is Mark's predictions for Trump are always correct. So go ahead.
Exactly. He will continue to annoy people. He will probably go even further in some cases. I actually predict that there will be a diplomatic incident somewhere. Now that could be with Russia, Britain, possibly. It could be with China. Who knows? But I think he would definitely upset people. I think that what he will do, though, and this is a positive thing, and I think a lot of Americans are hoping that he will do this, that he will actually put more focus on jobs for the Americans, and I think that would be good for them. But one prediction I think in on a serious note is that his hairstyle will become more ridiculous, and I think that it's inevitable that he will lose a bit more hair as he gets older, and there will be more of a comb over.
Well, yes, but I think an interesting point, and I made this when we did our show about his election, when we were talking about his election. Right at the point that he was about to accept Clinton's acceptance of her defeat, he'd had the phone call. He was about to make his speech. He walked out, and his hair looked resplendent. And I think he's got a new hairdresser. I think all the people descended on him and coiffured him. I don't think he's doing it himself anymore. And my prediction then, here's another prediction, that I suppose this should be in the business section, but I think that sales of hairspray will increase dramatically, thus increasing the greenhouse effect. During 2017,
which actually does lead us on to another subject, of course, which is
jolly good.
Will we see more global warming? And I am actually going to see a prediction here that there will be more controversy over whether global warming really is true or not. But I am going to say that we will see more melting of the ice caps, more melting of Donald Trump's hair, and I think that we will have your predictions claiming that nothing is being affected. But I think that there is an effect. Somewhere.
Here's my prediction. You see, of course, when we talk about global warming, we're not talking really about global warming. It's going to become shorthand. We're talking about man-made or man-caused global warming on top of the already warming. Of course, there is global warming. That's been happening, and the temperature of the globe goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. There's a cycle going back thousands and thousands and thousands of years. We happen to be on part of that cycle where we're going up. There is, I believe, not enough evidence to show that humans have had any effect. And I believe that we will see during the next year more release of data showing that, of course, I am correct in this. And it's not just I've been keeping an eye on various scientific journals, and there are some papers that are going to be published next year which support the view that even if man-made effects have had some small effect on global warming, it is so tiny that it's nothing to worry about. I think that that man-made global warming industry, as it's now become, has been sort of one of the biggest conspiracy theories to hit the Earth. But for next year, what I'm going to say is that I predict continued cooling, because we had the El Nino effect, this warm wind that comes up every now and then. And in 2016, we had a big effect from it. And it caused a huge increase in global temperatures, and we saw some melting of ice. But the ice comes back as the temperatures go back down again, and there's just as swift a reduction in temperature. We've seen in the latter part of 2016 a huge decrease in global temperature, which was, it's because of recovering from the El Nino, but so was the increase. If we look at the normal pattern, the overall pattern rather, of increase, it's been about level for the past 20 years. So don't expect any huge increase in the water levels in 2017.
I'm going to give a counter-argument here, which is that some predictors believe that particularly if China were to continue to produce, especially they're so reliant on coal, and the emissions that they give out. And of course, if India continues to prosper and grow and become more industrious, let alone obviously the developed nations like Europe and America, yes, I think that I'm going to go with the fact that some people will definitely be able to link the industrial world to global warming.
I would say that not only is that unlikely, that's impossible, because carbon dioxide is not the chief cause of global warming. It's water vapor, and there's been no proof of a link between the
But there's
levels
one
of
thing
carbon
that you're not
dioxide
taking
and
into
increasing water
account,
vapor.
and that is, of course, the prediction of the Third World War, which is the use of nuclear weapons.
Yes.
Now, of course, obviously, I know that we haven't
Yes,
been...
nice move, pushing over the actual science to go with that other prediction. That's fine. Yeah. Carry on. That's what everyone else does. So
well,
why not
the
do
reason
that?
I say that is that here's a prediction. Here's another prediction,
Yes.
which does link to this, and that perhaps North Korea might let off a few more experiments on the nuclear front.
So
This,
what
of
is
course,
this section is?
necessarily actually cause the Third World War, but I guess that with places like Japan feeling more uncomfortable sandwiched between North Korea and, of course, China, I think that we could see more unpredictability in the world by the end of the year.
Yes. Now, will there be a nuclear war in 2017? I mean, if we're going on to that subject now, will there be a nuclear war?
I think potentially we see the beginning of the use of nuclear weapons as a result of North Korea. So I think the trigger point is not World War III per se, but I think the beginnings of, if you like, the journey towards World War III.
Now, I mean, looking at the use of nuclear weapons, the major use of them, the wartime use of them was many, many years ago now. But the threat of them seemed to have had a calming effect, at least on the major nations going to war with each other. It doesn't stop them going to war with smaller nations, obviously. There's been plenty of wars going on, but they have had that restraining effect. Now, I take note of what Trump has said about increasing the nuclear arsenal in the US, and the reaction of Putin, of Russia, was that this was quite normal, and in fact, in line with what Trump had said previously. And I think that this, one of the effects of Trump will be in 2017 that he is keen on, being a strong leader, leading strong but willing to do a deal. I think that's a better way of working with other nations than Obama's approach of going and apologizing and trying to ingratiate yourself. I think that had a weakening effect on the US, and so had a destabilizing effect on the world. America, as the superpower, really, of the world, can have a calming effect by being strong. So I think that you will see instability. I agree with. We can have that as a Mark and Pete prediction that Korea will cause trouble, but I think that we'll see trouble from other countries lessened by Trump. I think that Russia will be able to deal on an equal basis and have a proper negotiation. I think that China also will be able to, despite what they're saying about being troubled by Trump wanting to talk with their opponents, I think the fact that he's behaving strong will result in better negotiation with them over such things as they're expanding out to have a huge war base out in the Pacific, which China are doing. So I think that overall there will be a calming effect because of Trump's willingness to lead strong and then negotiate. However, with countries like whoever's in charge, with countries like North Korea, there's very little that can be done. However, there is one bright light, and that is if China were to use its influence on North Korea, even that could be ameliorated. So I'm saying yes. Trump is. North Korea is going to cause trouble. Is going to be blustering and maybe threatening to use nuclear power. But in the end, I think at the end of 2017, we'll see the world as a more peaceful place in terms of war than it was
Right.
at the start of the year. That's my prediction. Hold me to it at
Okay.
the end of
Well,
2017.
I'm going to take on another set of subjects here, but I'm going to lump them together, which is about religion and entertainment. Not something that you always actually think of it together.
Well, I don't
But
know.
I'll give you a prediction, which I actually think that when it comes to entertainment, one of the big blockbusters of the year will, of course, be the great book from Mark and Pete, which is called Views from the Pews to Amuse.
I've read it. It's
Now,
great.
of course,
It's brilliant.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And now, of course, if you haven't read it, of course, you should read it. It has just been issued, of course, on Amazon Kindle, and, of course, a great forum where you can actually, you can go and buy Views from the Pews to Amuse. A great insight in terms of amusing subjects and observations on all sorts of walks of life. And I suggest that will be, a prediction, folks, the big blockbuster for the year. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think that I find it extraordinary that anyone would not have read it. But, I mean, if they really haven't bought it yet, they want to get out and buy it soon. I mean, how could anyone not read a collection of poems covering all areas of life and Bible verses to go with them, commenting on them, sometimes agreeing, sometimes disagree. What a resource for you. I mean, I would say, just looking at it, I think that it's 98% certain to change your life, and possibly for the better.
Well, indeed. And then, of course, talking about religion, I mean, just thinking of it from a biblical point of view, what was your predictions about 2017, giving a religious viewpoint? Say something from the Bible that might give us a hint of what we should be looking for.
Yes. Well, of course, I like to give a Bible verse, but in the context of a prediction, this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, look, I'm going to predict that Jesus does not return in power and bring an end to history next year. And my reasons for saying that is...
I'm not so sure. I have my own views.
Yes, well, this is my prediction. And my prediction for that is because I believe he has set us with work to do, and it's unfinished. Yes, to preach the gospel to all peoples, but also work to do in working for equality, for working for improved environment in a truthful way. And you know my views of the current view of environmental politics, but in a truthful way, working for a better environment, for more justice. And there's so much work to be done that we can do, but only with God's help, that I don't believe that Jesus is returning next year. But just to give you a Bible verse, this is what I would say is the theme verse for next year, that people will turn to trusting God more as they see that he's the only way, but not only that change is possible. We see the effects of the Brexit vote, that we had a referendum, we're going to leave, so change is possible. Trump was elected, whatever you think of him, many believe it was an answer to prayer, but whether or not you believe that or whether it's a disaster, it still shows that change is possible. So change is in the air. We can turn to trust in God. Certainly in the area in which I live, I see more and more people turning to the church and to the beliefs of the church as a way to change the society and the culture around them, the community in which they live. And so Romans 8 verse 31 says this, that we can be confident because, Paul, looking at the world around him, he was in a dire political situation. He came from a place that was under the rule of a foreign government, and a heavy-handed foreign government to that. And he said, what then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? And in 2017, I see an increase in turning to God and in turning to the Christian God, seeing the failures of the God of Islam. And I see that being sort of the starting of a revival, such as was seen a little bit in the 1950s with people like Billy Graham and their great rallies, but more so back in the 18th century. It's a time of turning back to God. The revival will start in 2017 through things like the Alpha Course, a course teaching basics of Christianity, but with people, Christians, having a greater influence in politics. We're already seeing that with the many declared Christians in Trump's cabinet, and with the Prime Minister of Britain being a Christian as well. So 2017, the year of turning back to faith, because if God is for us, who can be against us?
Well, indeed, that's a great way to end. Well, of course, as you predicted, if Jesus doesn't actually come back to give his judgment in 2017, if he does, well, we would love to have him as a guest on the show.
Oh, that's what you were talking about. Yes, yes, there is a standing invitation. Should he return? Absolutely. Yes, I forgot to mention.
Well, listeners, we wish you all the best for 2017, and we hope that you all have a happy new year and take on board some of the colourful conversations that you can have with Mark and Pete.